Hi, Mike from MyComicStore.net here. We don't sell you comics, we sell you your comics. There's no doubt that I love sharing what I get. I mean, comics is everything to me. My daughter, everybody. You've seen the videos. Anyhow, we're going to go on with a few new treasures I've gotten that I'm very, very fond of. And one of them I'm very, very proud to have. Keith Pollard has always been one of my favorite Spider-Man artists. And I know he was a solid artist in the 70s. He worked for Marvel and DC. He did a lot. His Spider-Man, to me, was just... It was right about the time that I started reading comic books. It was a very nice, very solid line drawing, very reminiscent of, not John Romita Sr., but it also had elements of Steve Ditko in it. It was a nice Peter Parker. He made him look like an everyday man. He wasn't too bulky, but he wasn't too thin, and it all worked for me. I found recently online that Keith Pollard is out there and available, and he's been making small attempts at getting back into the shows, which is very good. Wasn't coming anywhere near where I am. I opened a dialogue through email and found out that I was able to send him one of my books, and he did for me The Amazing Spider-Man and The Black Cat. And this is what it's all about. I mean, this is why I'm into comics. When somebody can produce something like this and share it with me, this is what it's all about. Words fail me. It's gratifying to have. It's a piece of art that's made for me by one of my favorite artists, and it's a nice dynamic piece. I like the moon in the background, and Spider-Man's got a little bit of backlighting. That's great. That works. But I'm going to tell you, one of the best stories I have comes out of... Scott Hanna did a piece for me of Spider-Man versus the Lizard. It was nice, but it was done in the Feral hardcover that Angel Medina worked on. So the story was that there were a bunch of different characters, animalistic characters, that got out of control thanks to a new street drug. And Scott did a wonderful piece of Spider-Man versus the Lizard. I had the opportunity to meet Clayton Crain, who was also a contributor, in Boston. I approached Clayton and asked him if he would be able to do a piece for me. And he said he didn't really have time. I had the hardcover in my hands. And he asked what I had in mind. And when I said to him that Scott had done this piece, and I opened it up for him, he kind of looked at it and he kind of smiled and shook his head and said, I see something right there. He says, I may have time to get that done for you. He says, do me a favor, though I can't commit to it. Bring it back later and we'll see what we can do. And I did, and he did. And Clayton fit Puma right in here. He said it was just spectacular. He said it was one of the most fun jobs he'd ever had, taking an existing drawing and trying to match the tempo and the dynamics to fit his own character in there. And I think it worked out really well. He also liked the way that Scott used the white to highlight. So, you know, here we see that Clayton did some of that on his own. That got me thinking, if that was fun for him, you know, what would my next piece be? So I came up with the idea of finding a generic Spider-Man book that I could work in and getting a drawing of Spider-Man versus the Sinister Six by 7 different artists. This worked out for me really, really well. The only thing that held me back is my OCD said that for this first drawing, they had to be Spider-Man artists. They had to be somebody that was associated with Spider-Man. Lee Weeks was available. Lee Weeks would have worked on it. Lee Weeks is a great artist and has done other pieces for me. But Lee Weeks in my mind is Daredevil or Gambit. He's not a Spider-Man artist. And there were many others. J. Scott Campbell volunteered to do one of the characters. Love J. Scott Campbell. But again, he's not a Spider-Man artist. And this is what's going to work for me, is now that this is complete, I've decided I'm going to go on with it. Spider-Man versus 6 other different characters. And I'm going to relax my need to have Spider-Man artists do it so that I can get some really good artists, and hopefully, you know, I can get some really good Spider-Man artists as well. Put together another great drawing. But what I've got here is Bob McLeod laid it out for me, and we've got Spider-Man versus the Sinister Six. And it worked out really well. We've got your Amazing Spider-Man by Bob McLeod. We've got The Sandman by Mark Bagley. And Mysterio by Scott Hanna. Electro by Rick Leonardi. Craven by Phil Jimenez. Doc Ock was by Tom Lyle. It was a pleasure to meet Tom Lyle. What a great guy. And Mike Mckone did the Vulture for me. And Mike's always been really, really good. It was, you know, Rick Leonardi's another one of my favorites, so that was a real thrill that he was involved in this. 7 characters, 7 different artists. You can't ask for any more. I mean, it's just a great original piece that nobody else has. That's what comics for me is all about. I get this stuff, and then I'm able to share it. So getting this stuff is part of buying the comics and selling them, and being able to have access to what I want. You know, sharing that with you is really exciting because it allows you to get what you want. And everybody's happy. And when everybody's happy, we have a great, great life together. So, thank you. I hope you enjoy.